Hey guys, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever applies to you. Welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Julia. I'm a contemporary singing specialist based in Australia, and today I am diving on into Pantera performing the song Cemetery Gates. And I'm really keen for this one because not only have you guys been asking me for a reaction to this song, but also Elizabeth from Charismatic Voice said that I would probably enjoy this one. So, without further ado, let's dive on in. Okay, okay, this is really cool. He is like he's using quite a few different things in his vocal setup. There's a distinct contrast between how he approaches the singing in the first verse and then how that sort of escalates into something that is a lot harsher, a lot more like throaty and gritty in the chorus. In the first verse, it sounds a lot more relaxed. We're getting vibrato through some of his vowel work, and then we've also got like just a sense of freedom through the singing itself. It's very smooth, it's very connected. He's also got a good amount of speech quality and twang coming through the top of some of the sounds in that first verse so that we don't lose the words. Sometimes, if the vowel is not particularly energetic, if you will, it's not an overly energetic or an overly powerful vowel. If we don't have that speech quality there, the singing as a whole can start to sound a little bit underwhelming. So I like the fact that he's got a lot of speech quality and a lot of this twangy resonance that's coming through a lot of the higher sounds that he's having to make, because it means that I can, one, hear the words clearly, which is great, and two, it means that that contrast into that smoother, more free vowel sounds really pleasant and relaxing. But then, of course, it's escalated into this chorus where he's using a few different distorted sounds. One sounds really throaty, one sounds almost like a little bit more of, almost like a little bit like fry at times. I don't think it was like completely fry, and it could have just been while he was on like a descending passage, but it sounds really interesting, and it is a direct contrast to what he just did in that first verse. Even like there's like, what was it? There was like a little, almost like a little yelp or a little cry through the top there, like a yow, like that kind of sound. Yeah! Ow! That's cool. He's really playing up some of these like more punchy, energetic. To me, they come across as almost more percussive. Some of these sounds, because they're just a little bit sharper. They're not as smooth as what he was doing in the beginning there. It sounds really cool. The other thing I enjoyed was in the beginning what the guitar was doing. We went from this really cool riff, and then the drum would do like a really awesome like fill on the third and fourth beat at the end of beats. So they would play it through, and then there would be a repeat of the chords, or a variation on the riff, and then the drum would do something cool. But I was expecting it the second time, but then they changed how what the guitar was doing, going from the riff into something completely different. So if we listen to that again. expecting something similar to what they did after the little drum fill the first time, and it wasn't. They completely changed again. That was really cool. All right, let's keep going because I'm quite enjoying this contrast that he's doing with his voice. As far as the throatiness that I mentioned is concerned, there are times where it sounds quite tight, and normally if that was happening all the time, I would be a little bit concerned for like the longevity of that particular sound for that particular singer, depending on how long they're hoping their career will go for. But there are so many points where he's actually releasing that throatiness that to me it sounds a little bit more like a deliberate choice from him. In particular, if we listen to the last vowel at the end of that chorus, like for something that is a little bit more on the restricted, gritty side all through, and then we hit that last vowel, and he's brought the vibrato back. It's great to hear. Again. Okay, so that's really cool. I like when songwriters and people who write music take ideas that they've already kind of hinted at in the beginning. So in this case, it was actually the musical idea as a whole. In the beginning, it sounds like it's just an intro, but then they're actually using it as part of the song. So it's like it has its a reintroduction, if you will. And I like that. It's also really good for making a song stick a little bit more because people like things that they're familiar with. So you have an idea in the beginning and then you can reinstate it in some new way later on in the piece and it will actually keep the listener. But there's also, it creates this almost like sense of familiarity and people like the things that they feel they're familiar with. So I thought that was a really interesting thing to bring up right now. And it's cool to hear it in here because what you think is just going to be an introduction riff, they've actually reinstated or reintroduced later on. Sometimes when I'm alone, I wonder aloud if you're watching over me, someplace far above. I must reverse my life. I can't live in the past and set my soul free. Belong to me at last. Through all those complex years, I thought I was alone. I didn't care to look around and make this world my own. And when she died, I should have cried and spared myself some pain. You left me incomplete, all alone as the memories still remain. Yeah. The vibrato usage through that was really, really cool. Although I did notice that when he had more of the warbly vibrato that was coming through, his jaw and his head was moving a fair bit with that. And maybe that's just part of him using that technique. Usually in more conservative branches of pedagogy, they prefer the vibrato to not be accompanied with a jaw or a head wobble. Let's go back and listen to the vibrato. I can't live in the past and set my soul. First, interesting vowel choice there. I can't live in the past. Past. Cool. That was really interesting because it meant there was a slightly different color coming through in that vowel as opposed to it being like a pure vowel. Set my soul free. Belong to me at last. Through all those complex years, I thought I was alone. I didn't care to look around and make this world my own. And when she died, I should have cried and spared myself some pain. You left me incomplete, all alone as the memories still remain. I think it's really cool how if you listen to some of his lower vowel work, you get a little bit more of this like darker warmth through, and yet as he's going fully up, he's not forfeiting any of the volume or the perceived volume from his resonance, but it does become brighter and more pingy, and that is something that I love to hear in male vocalists or any vocalists really who are going to start to take a belting sound up slightly higher, for it to have that pingy ringy quality to it, because that to me tells me that they're using twang. And twang is going to give you perceived volume that doesn't necessarily rely on you smacking your vocal folds together as hard as you can, which is when you can get hurt. So that's really cool how you can actually hear that pingy ringy quality stay consistent, and if anything become a little bit brighter as he's ascending. I like it again. Oh, we are going back. Oh, we are going back. We are going back for that last bit. I was not expecting that. You know how I mentioned before he's got a lot of twang in his belt as he goes up? So those higher, like, mixed, almost shrieks, that is, like, mostly resonance that you're hearing there. As much as it sounds like it's a loud sound, that is not coming from vocal fold mass. The quality is very sharp, almost tinny. So his vocal folds are fairly stretched there, and he's having to coordinate enough mass to maintain a little bit of a fuller tonal quality, but not so much that he can't actually lengthen to the right pitch that he needs. Because that's where I think some people get a little bit confused, is that the two muscles that are working there, you got your cracothyroid muscle, which actually lengthens for you to get to the pitch that you need. So cracothyroid muscle pulls the vocal, well, not the vocal folds, it pulls the thyroid cartilage, tilts it forward so that the vocal folds can lengthen. As the vocal folds get longer, your pitch goes up. But it's, let's say its partner muscle, if you will, contrasting and yet equally important muscle, is the TA muscle, which is the thyroarytenoid muscle. And its job is to make shorter, fatter vocal folds. So it is primarily responsible for the amount of mass that you get into a particular sound. So if you try to take up too much mass or vocal weight too high, it gets to a point where those two muscles are, it's like they're fighting. The TA and the CT are fighting because you want to maintain mass, but the CT muscle says, dude, we got to get longer and thinner if we want to hit this note. So if you have the TA muscle going, no, only mass, and the CT muscle is going, okay, well, you can't achieve this pitch with that much mass. I'm sorry, my friend. You're going to have to balance between the two here. We got to compromise. So at that particular sound up there, that super metallic quality, that is a combination of longer, thinner vocal folds with a decent amount of the TA still engaged, but also the shape in the pharynx. If you look at certain contemporary vocal methods, some of them achieve it by imagining almost like a horizontal shape inside of the mouth as opposed to a vertical shape, which is very like traditional vowel shapes. A lot of them like to think of vertical or tall. For this particular metallic quality, thinking more on that horizontal shape to create this almost like metallic compression through the sound up the top there. So I just want to go back and have another listen to that just to see where he got up to, because I wasn't expecting it. And then I loved how the guitar followed up. It's like, that was cool, double down on the guitar. Sounds cool. I want to hear where he went to though. Okay, turn the piano on, dingbat. That's an E5! Oh. Okay, so little indicator, professional tenors, usually you want to aim to at least be able to get to a C5 as a professional tenor. That seems to be like a reasonable amount of range for a professional tenor. Bear that in mind, keyword, working professional tenor. You're generally going to want to be working up towards that C5. At least a B flat, at least a B flat 4. So to be up on an E5, that is considered above what is your stereotypical professional tenor, kind of like where they want to get to. So that E5, and then I swear he goes higher. Okay, so what he's doing is he's like sliding almost through those microtones. He's doing like a little microtone slide through a G5 back to that E5. So, you know, the E5 was just the warm up, going for a G5 immediately after it. That is really cool. I hope that my explanation on how that sound is made was sufficient, because it's very similar actually to what female singers have to do in order for us to mix belt up quite high as well. I think for the male voice there, it starts to sound very metallic. That's quite high for the male voice. And if you listen to other singers who sort of create that metallic-y higher quality, there's like a similarity that you can start to hear between them. Not the vocalist's natural tone, of course, but as they start to ascend, you'll hear this bright, pingy, metallic sound as they go up there. And part of that is just, that's how you can facilitate getting up there in the first place and still maintaining some presence of sound, that mixing quality for you to get up around that G5, E5. So this was really cool. I'm so sorry I got so giggly over the triplets. And the reason why, this is going to sound dumb, the reason I got giggly over the triplets is, one, I wasn't expecting it, but two, triplets to me always feel like someone on a balance beam, like trying to balance along, and then you make it out of the triplets and you're like, oh, yes, good. That's the visual for me. So I was actually really impressed with the drummer as well in this particular. I was impressed with all of it. I thought that the little riff with the larger interval in the second half of the riff sounded really, really cool, where instead of going to where you think it is, it goes up. I thought that sounded awesome. But the drummer with those triplets, I thought it sounded really cool, and I really appreciated the little fills that he would put in different places. So an example was leading into that last section. It's just fun. This to me is fun. Triplets are to me like a fun rhythm to sing, because it feels like I'm walking a tightrope through the time. Because if you don't know what a triplet is, it literally is like you're balancing across the amount of beats that you would normally consider the down beats. So if you're looking at like crotchet triplets, one whole crotchet triplet is across the space of 2 beats. So if you have 4 beats in a bar, which was what they just did then, you had this triplet, you're balancing that time for 3 beats across the space of 2. So to me, it really does feel like a balancing act. It adds like momentum. Like, are you gonna stumble? Are you gonna land out of it? It's just a cool subdivision. And to me, I know it's a simple subdivision, but I like it, and I wasn't expecting it, so I appreciate that, and I appreciate a lot of the little fills that the drummer decided to put in here. Overall, vocally, I liked the different kinds of texture that he used in the chorus because it felt like he had a really good grasp of being able to use that gritty texture and then release to something like vibrato in the vowel, like what he did in the second chorus, or sing in a really smooth, connected way in the verse. And then suddenly, pow, we've got some throaty elements and some grit and some compression coming through there. It sounded like he had a pretty good grasp of being able to use them or not use them, up to him. So I like hearing that. It just, from a vocal health standpoint, it's a nice thing to hear. I know it sounds boring. Vocal health, who cares about that? But it's just something that sits in the back of my mind as a coach who has to work with singers who need their voices for a long period of time. It just sits in the back there like, how efficient is this sound and how long will this last them? We have to like weigh that up with how cool is this gonna sound? It's always just sits there, and so seeing him switch that on and off, and basically he's in control of it as opposed to it's in control of him, that's really cool to hear. I think I've said that on like a bajillion videos, but here we are again. Another cool person who's switching their vocal or extended singing techniques on and off whenever they so choose. And then that last mixy metallic belt at the end. Yeah, that was really cool. Another thing that I enjoyed musically was just the little bits of space that they had. It was almost like a chapter. It was almost like they had musical chapters going on in this song. So the little break kind of like prepares us either for something new or for something that's been like introduced earlier to be reintroduced. And I thought that that was really cool because it meant that for me, the song didn't feel very long, and I was very interested to hear what was going to happen after that gap. Space used well builds anticipation. So I really liked their use of space in this particular arrangement. Another thing I liked was the balance between the two voices when they were singing at the same time. It wasn't for a very long time, but it did seem particularly well balanced, at least um, as was appropriate for the style and the music that's going on behind them. Like, I'm not expecting a perfect blend because that's not the style of music. A perfect blend wouldn't make a whole heap of sense, and something that is a little bit more gritty and jarring at times. So I liked the blend that they had, though. I thought it was sufficient, and the two voices seemed to work well together. And final thing that I just wanted to mention was the guitar solo. I think that this solo is actually a really good example of how you can build creative solos that make musical sense that don't tire out the listener. Some people approach a solo and they think you're just shoving a million notes into like the space of 1 second, and the faster you can play, the better the music and the better you are. Playing fast without any kind of musical creativity just shows that you can play fast. So your technical skills might be high, but perhaps you're not showing off your musical skills in that moment. And I liked this particular solo because he was using musical ideas which kind of developed upon themselves and kept building. So by the time he was moving very, very quickly through his solo, it was like it was dragging my soul along with it by building little bits of tension, and the anticipation of the release of that tension is what makes a solo so exciting, when why that solo as a whole was really satisfying for me to listen to by the time we got to the end of it. If you can play fast, that's great. That's all well and good, but what are the musical ideas that you're executing at that speed? Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave that one. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a like, click the subscribe button and the bell notification beside it for more just like this one. As usual, I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy, and I will see you next time.